And we are live. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm all right, thank you.
You're doing good?
When you go live, it's like, is it going to go? Is it going to be there?
I actually had a live a few months ago when I first started doing it. It was so funny. I had my main lady, Rhonda D'Ambrosio, on with me. And we were just chatting away for like 5-10 minutes. And I started getting these messages going, where's your live? Like, it's not up. Like, you said it was going to be at 1 and it's not up yet. And so Rhonda and I were just like, oh, we've got to restart it. So, but yeah. So anyway, so thanks to everyone that is joining the Get Your Shit Together show. Today, I have an amazing human being that I'm going to be talking to, which is Andrew Jenkins, who I actually met, I think it was about a year ago when lockdown first happened. I did a talk for a company or in a business that he is a part of, which is Growth CEOs, which I think is now being moved over to Inspiring CEOs. There's 2 there. You've built up another business there, which we'll jump into. But Andrew is a phenomenal human being. He has been working in corporate for a very long time of his life. He now helps teams become high performance teams and sort of breaks the mold of how business has been previously built, especially in the 80s and the 90s. So, and also on top of that, he also decided to become the fittest human being he could possibly be in the last 2-3 years as well. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Hey, welcome. Yeah, you talked about the story of live. I was on with a lady called Claire Richardson the other day, and we were going at it like mad. We were going 5 minutes in, realised I hadn't pressed the live button.
Oh, that's do you know what? I guarantee I would do that one day. Like, that is actually totally up my alley to do that. I would do everything just like, yeah, we're live, but no, we're not.
We were, but it's a great dress rehearsal, right? So,
so how are you this fine, wet morning?
Fine and dandy, thank you. After this, I'm going surfing, so things are looking good. So the surf's up, so I'm going out surfing. I was going to do that yesterday, but I got sunstroke yesterday. I was wobbling all over. I was kind of leaning to the left. It was really quite funny.
Oh, gosh. Do you know what? I'm just going to pop up Claire here. So Claire always calls me the Maycock and actually hashtags it all the time. But Claire actually went and did stand-up paddleboarding. Wow. I think it was 2 days ago, and she loved it, which I told her she would.
Brilliant. It's great. It's a whole new level. Stand-up paddleboarding. Stand-up surfing is even harder. So my wife loves paddleboarding. Yeah. My wife's a big paddleboarder.
Yeah, I got really into it in Vancouver. Random
wonderful
place to get into it.
Wow. Yeah, Sarah, my wife, she loves it. It's just very peaceful, and she can go paddleboarding, down the estuary. Absolutely loves it. So yeah.
Has she done yoga paddleboarding?
Has she done
yoga paddleboarding?
Yoga paddleboarding? No.
Yeah. Okay, that's a new one for her to give a go. So you go out paddleboarding and then you do some yoga.
Yeah, now that sounds cool. That sounds like you have to be really balanced to do that.
I tried it once and it was definitely challenging. So but it's honestly so fun. I find it really meditative. So 100% need to move to the water because I'm in Tunbridge Wells. No water around me. I need to move down to the coast.
One thing I found for balance is that when I'm in 2 places. Here I'm in Devon, and my office in the Midlands. When we're there, I've got this stand-up board, right? It's like a balance board, and so I stand up to do my presentation stuff on live, and I've got this balance board that I'm operating all the time. So you're constantly in balance, and that's a bit of yoga in some ways. You're learning to balance on a balance board.
It's strengthening the core, right?
Absolutely, you've got it. Yeah. So Claire, that might be a hint for you to to get your paddleboarding to a new level.
She said she'd be in the sea in a second. So let's get started. Let's have a really good chat about, what we're on the fitness route now. So let's talk a little bit about how you became semi-addicted to doing exercise over the lockdown in the first and second lockdown. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Okay, it actually started before then. It started a couple of years before that, and I'm actually wearing a shirt which I bought when I was too big to wear it, so I call it my fat git shirt, right? So I'm actually wearing it today, weirdly, and it was a slim shirt that I bought because that's the size I wanted to fit into. Okay. And my mate had said to me previously, who's my best friend, my best man, and he said, mate, Andrew, you're getting a bit of a fat boy. You know, that was his expression, not mine. It was his expression. You're getting a bit of a fat boy. You need to lose some weight. And I was like, yeah, he's dead right. And I was looking at myself, and I'd done a presentation at an academy school. I was doing some work with them, and they had these big mirrors. It was in this big gym, and they had these big mirrors. I was looking at myself thinking, I need to lose some weight. So I was about 14 stone then. I'm 6'1", and so I felt way out of condition. So I just decided, it was January, and why not diet in January, that I went for it, and I started to lose weight. I lost 2 stone in 6 months. And wow. I can fit into this. This is my fat kid shirt to make sure that I can, you know, that I'm still slim enough to, this is my tester, if you like. If I get into this shirt, I'm doing well. The other thing I found, that I was a size 32 waist, and I dropped to size 30 during that process. And I've for 2 years now, I've been in size 30 trousers, which I am astonished at. At the age of 59, you know, I've slimmed down dramatically. I've got rid of all of my sort of middle-aged fat and really worked at it. And then in the lockdowns, you're quite right, I started to go fitness bonkers. It's your fault, actually. I blame you completely.
Blame me. I'm sure Claire would blame me too if she could.
So the whole thing that Claire taught me, that Katie taught me, was intermittent fasting, and I really like the idea of that. And actually, we don't need to eat as much in our 50s, you know, and that's something that you have to wean yourself off with the love of food. I like my food. I've always eaten healthy appetite. But this fitness thing, that really got to me. And Katie was doing 7-minute planks, which I thought, wow, you know, at that point I was doing about 3-minute planks, and they hurt. If you've ever done the plank, it is probably the most miserable experience in the universe. It's horrible doing the plank. It is horrible. But Katie said she could do 7 minutes. I'm thinking, 7 minutes? And so that was a challenge for me. And not that I wanted to beat her, but I've matched her. But it was like, I like a bit of competition, and Katie's quite competitive. So I kept texting Katie through this. I'm now doing 4 minutes. Now I'm up to 5. Now I'm up to 6. And I got to 7. It's like, woohoo. And
honestly, it's so painful. Yeah. It's so really painful. Anyone that wants to give it a go, you have to just go into it with the right mindset. So I challenged a friend of mine. I actually challenged a group, but only one guy took me up on it, which is fair enough. And we were just competing against each other. So we had to beat each other. And we were kind of silly about it, because we started off with like 3 minutes, and then the next person was like, I got 4, and then the next time I was like, well, I got 5. We didn't go up in like small increments. We went up in minute increments. When you're doing the plank, a minute feels like an hour. So we got to, and then we got to 7, and like my mate, I can't remember, I said, I'm done. Like, it's just not fun anymore. Like, there's no point to
7 is really hard. I mean, some people go on for hours, right? But, you know, what I've found is that it's just too hard to maintain. I've dropped down. I do 5 now. Most days I do 5-minute planks, and I've religiously kept that up, if that's the right word. And I find that to be really, you know, it's great. You know, I don't enjoy it, but I can manage that. 7 minutes is just too long. It hurts so much. It's actually probably doing me more harm than good in the end.
Yeah. And so Jerry just wrote here, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, I'm so sorry. It's never too late to change. And I absolutely agree with that. I think that how many people, and we can sort of segue into business as well, but how many people sort of go, oh, this is how I've always been. This is I am who I am, and then don't just change. Like, a lot of people get into that standpoint.
Well, do you know what? I just thought to myself, okay, so can I build a 6-pack in my 50s?
I love that.
It took me a while, right? But, you know, and I was exercising crazy. In fact, I think you pulled me up on it, Kate, to say you're actually doing this too much. I was exercising every day in the lockdown 1, lockdown 2, lockdown 33. The whole year I exercised about an hour and a half every day, doing weights and all sorts of sit-up exercises and stuff every work day for a year. So it was a bit of a challenge. And I have to say that at the end of the year, we were able to come down to Devon again, because, you know, things opened up, and we were down in our Devon place. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I hadn't seen myself in that mirror for a while. And I thought, I've overdone this, because I'm looking really scrawny. So I need to. And my wife Sarah was saying, you know, you're looking good, but you're looking a bit scrawny. You put a bit more weight on. So I've rebalanced that now. I'm still exercising pretty much every work day, but not going as bonkers at it. You know, I still use my weights. I kind of go for a cup of coffee, I do some weights, and then I do some work, and then I do some weights. So I'm flip-flopping during the day just to kind of fit all my exercise in. And I find that to be much more healthy, actually. It's a bit more of a balance. But it was great. But I got my 6-pack, Katie. Yeah, I got my 6-pack.
There you go. I mean, high five in your 50s. That's amazing.
Pretty
so
good,
Claire
really.
has much said if I had no job, I would just do sports. I actually agree with Claire. I worked at a gym for. Actually, my first business, I set my first business up in a gym, and I pretty much just worked out the whole every day there. And then when I was in Vancouver, I worked for a gym and I worked out quite a lot. But yeah, I honestly, if I didn't do this, I reckon I would just be doing sports, or I'd be a private investigator because I feel like I'd be really good at it. But yeah, like
it's quite addictive, isn't it? It gets a bit OCD as well, actually. You know, I think that was the thing. You're trying to build muscle. It gets really OCD, doesn't it? You know. And
well, I did fitness modeling comps, and that is like weighing everything, like checking in everything, and that is OCD to the max. And
that's the problem with it.
Do you know what? I loved the challenge of it, but I'll never do it again. Like, I'll never do it again. Like, it was a good challenge. I was in my 20s. I could stick to it. And now I'm just like, even though I'm probably fitter now than I was in my 20s, I just wouldn't do it again. Absolutely not. But Jerry said I went from 108, I'm guessing this is kilos, to 82, changed a couple of things. That's awesome work.
Brilliant. Like, that is amazing. Brilliant. Yeah, that's astonishing. There was someone else that said, so if I had no job, I'd do sports. That was Claire, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, I get that. And for me,
Yuri, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm going to start. I'll pronounce your name correctly. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for correcting me. I hate it when I pronounce people's names wrong because it does my head in. So I'm so sorry. Right. So Yuri, thank you for letting me know. I feel so bad.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
Via, what were you going to say?
Just on something about the OCD thing. I think for me, the lockdown was, from my head, was really difficult. And I found it incredibly, as soon as we got to lockdown 3, it was even worse, or I call it lockdown 33, because it was really tough on my head at that point. And I found that I was using more of my downstairs brain than my upstairs brain. So the exercise, that really helped me through that lockdown period, actually. It just distracted me enough and gave me something to do with my body that, you know, enabled me to aim for something that was just beyond this lockdown blues that I seem to have just stumbled into. And I'm not a negative person at all, but lockdown blues really did affect me.
I had the same thing. So you said downstairs brain and upstairs brain. So for everyone that's listening and watching, what does that mean to you?
Okay, so the downstairs part of your brain is more the kind of basal brain. It's much more instinctively led, and it's very closely wired to your fight, flight, freeze mechanism. So you're constantly on alert, and it's a slightly hyper state because you're just working on instinct, right? It was if you were in the savannah trying to survive not be eaten by animals, say, for example, or you're in a war zone or whatever. It just felt like every day was like this hum of heightened awareness, which was very instinctive, where your upstairs part of your brain is when you're a little bit more relaxed and you can access these thinking circuits that help us to be, proper humans, if you like, and to be able to think straight, to have our emotions in check, to be balanced and centered. And I found I was completely off center because I was completely ruled during the lockdown period by fight, flight, freeze. It felt every day, felt like that. Quite an anxiety state in some ways, it's a heightened state. That's the difference for me.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I think, most of the people I spoke to, and even just for myself, I really struggled with what you call lockdown 33. I've got to say, it came into effect in Kent on December 18th. And I will always remember that date because it was literally the day that I was like, I'm off on my, my Christmas break now. And I was like, oh, now I'm in a lockdown. Awesome. Like, that's fantastic. So it was really challenging. I did the same thing to you. I did a lot of exercise. But you've been pretty open and honest about how you coped going through exercise and having the saying that you're waking up in a bit of an anxious state and the exercise helped, which makes sense if you think about it. Your body is primed to run away or fight a potential threat. So you're exercising it out, right? You're using exercise as a method. So there you go.
Yeah, it worked really well. I've since found that, weirdly, this is only very recent actually, that I'm starting to return back to meditation. I was really good at meditation way before lockdown. And somehow along the way through lockdown, I've kind of lost that meditation thread. And I'm starting to reintroduce that again, and just to calm my mind down, which then means that I can then re-access these bits up here. And that was like an aha moment for me, just a few days ago, thinking, that's what I'm missing here. And that's the kind of, I found the staircase now to get back to the upstairs part of my brain. And I think that's through meditation and light exercise. I'm still exercising, but I'm not going mad at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I use exercise as a meditation.
Wow.
Like, why don't you just take the words out of my mouth? Exercise is a
Look at
medicine
that.
for me. I go around the bend. I'm the same. I use exercise as a meditation in a way. So whether I'm going for a walk or I'm hitting the gym, that's my time. And that's when my brain is probably more on the human part of my brain, which I call the human part, which is the analytical part, the logical part, the upstairs brain, as you call it. And I know that if I haven't exercised in a little while, I am like, if I'm grumpy, I'm like, hang on, what haven't I done? And it's usually linked to exercise. I'm like, just go and do like a 15-minute hit, Katie, you'll be right. So
yeah,
I find exercises just kind of balances me out, which is really important. But you're a really energetic person, so I could imagine that exercise is super important for you, not just physically, but also mentally, to help keep you focused.
Yeah, keep balanced, keep centered. And yeah, I think, with work, we can be too much in our heads. And I think it's really important that centeredness is that ability to work, rest, and play, and get that balance right. And it's something I've been working on quite a bit during this sort of April, May, June time, is just rebalancing work, rest, and play. Because actually too much work makes Jack a dull boy, right? Or whatever the phrase is. Work is just not healthy, and we get sedentary, right? We end up sitting down, our shoulders slump down, our necks move forward, we lose our posture, and just remembering all of those things, particularly when we get older, into middle age, and thinking about the next 10 years ahead. I want to make sure that my posture and my fitness levels are, and my structure around my whole body is good enough for me to continue to operate at a high level, because I think that brain, that head body connection is really important, and it's something we forget in the working world that we're in. We think we all are what we think we're not.
Yeah, I have to say, I actually put up a post today, which was, the whole saying, I'll rest when I'm dead, or I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's like, dude, you're on a marathon, you're sprinting a marathon to get there, my friend. So it really is important to have that work, rest, play. And, we've spoken multiple times about how I didn't do that in my 20s. I burnt out twice. And the first time I burnt out took me 8 months to come back. The second time I burnt out took me 6 months to burn out again, because I probably hadn't really overcome it. And it took me 12 months to really get back. So it's definitely something that rest is really, really important. And when we are at work, we do get into that work state. So Yuri has just come in and said, a friend of mine asked me why I have so much energy for exercise. And I responded that I give it the same priority as eating and sleeping. Exactly.
Nice.
How many, okay, I always say this. So how many people, when they get busy, they get really into work, what are the 3 habits that they drop? Diet, exercise, and sleep.
Diet. All of those things, isn't it? Yeah. And then notepad by the bed. Yeah.
All the things that you need, to be productive, efficient, and have sustainable work efficiency, you throw it out the window because I'm too busy to do that. So thanks Yuri for popping that in up as well. So that's really good. So here's what's really interesting with your work. So I remember speaking to you. Obviously, we spoke at the beginning of last year, and you had you've got your business, and then you're also a part of a couple of other businesses as well, which is supporting leaders and CEOs and things like that. But within your business, you work with people talking about high performance teams. Now, I reckon back in the 90s, when you were talking about high performance teams, it meant something completely different to what it means today. So
brilliant.
Have a bit of a chat with me about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Okay, so I believe that high-performing teams, it's much more than just as human beings, we have to break things down, don't we? And oftentimes when we look at our business, we think, well, there's some processes, there's some technical stuff, and there's the people bit, right? And so I think human beings find it easier to work through process and technology, and then the people bit is like, okay, so we need to get the right people in the right place, doing the right thing with the right skills, and we just need to employ those people, right? So we tend to think everything's like a cog in a box, but for me, high performance team it's much, much more than that. It's kind of helping a team to facilitate that team to become awesome together, and that's a different prospect. It's not about techniques and skills. It's about small steps that make powerful changes, that build resilience, that then you can apply to people in teams. So you can apply that resilience piece to, well, how do we collaborate more? How do we build trust? How do we handle conflict? How do we develop a growth mindset, both individually and together? How do we handle and give feedback appropriately to one another so we can cover each other's blind spots and help each other to grow rather than just pull each other down? And how do we build better conversation skills? And so, I think oftentimes we just see the problem as, well, we just need to fix the problem, and the problem is process and technology and skills. But it's more than that, because if we look at what the real problem is in most businesses, you could actually I think this is probably true factually, is that 80% of business change projects never really deliver on their promise, right? And I think that's a fact. It's certainly something that I've seen many, many times in businesses. And so the solution is, well, what's the solution then? And it's about people, and it's more than just an XYZ equation here. I believe that we need to get beyond just paying lip service to developing people. And in my opinion, the biggest problem with business change is that 80% of it is a people problem, and that we're not tackling it appropriately. We're just thinking, we get the right people, get the right skills, cogs in the box, we can all make it work. And it's more than just, well, we'll do some personality profiling, we'll do some team building, and that'll do. No, because that only gets you so far. Mm-hmm. And I think the real problem is that the power here, the impact that we can have in business is what happens between people, Katie. It's the relationship more than the skill or the method of acquisition.
No, I completely agree. I think one of the biggest pieces that is missing, and every time you go into any company, I do similar stuff, but I talk about the impact that pressure and stress has on performance. So we just tackle it in different ways, similar stuff. But I've got to say that when you look at what managers are wanting, they're like, I want my team to be efficient. It's like, okay, cool. So how do they cope under pressure? Yeah. Well, I have to use pressure to get them to perform. It's like, but do you know the right type of pressure for individual people? Because everyone has individual thresholds, and pressure is a fluid state, right? Like some days, if you've had a good night's sleep, you've exercised, you've got your diet on par, you can probably take on more that day. But if you are not sleeping, your diet's off kilter, your exercise is out the window, and you've got someone in your team that's also doing that, you can't give them the same amount of pressure. So it has to be a fluid state. So understanding that and understanding the human element first is so important.
Absolutely. It's not just building an instrument that, like if you think about a musician as music as an analogy, you can learn to play an instrument in a beautiful way and be an absolute expert in playing the violin or any instrument. And to me, it's more than just the individual instruments. It's about learning to play together, in a band, as an orchestra, to create something together, like a symphony, if you like. And you don't necessarily need to have high-performing individuals, although that can help. It's more about, how do we work together? How do we play nicely together? It's I to the power of we. And you don't necessarily need to have highly skilled, highly capable people to do that. You just need to believe in your people and believe in each other and support each other and build something in a team that feels safe and that you belong. And if you belong and you feel safe, then you can stretch yourself beyond that, and you stretch each other together. You help each other. That's the point of collaboration. It's not just you as an individual instrument. It's how do we work together collectively to support each other. And if you've got an environment and a culture that feels safe and that you belong and that you're excited about being that, and you're excited about coming to work because of the colleagues that you're working with, and you're all on the same page, then this can be an incredibly addictive experience, because it's like producing, music together that creates, an album which is like phenomenal, and it's just 4 people or 8 people getting together and doing something quite magical. And
I love that.
Yeah.
I think I love that analogy so much. So for anyone that's watching and listening, here's a question to you guys. What is one of the biggest reasons why you left your job? Like, what's a reason that you left your role? And I guarantee you it'll come down to some type of miscommunication, expectations weren't either they didn't understand their expectations or anything like that. So I'd be really curious for anyone that is watching, like, let me know what is one of the biggest reasons why you have left a role. But I think that, you know, if you look at, I've always worked in sales teams. I've either been in a sales team or I've been a manager of a sales team. And at the end of the day, you're working towards a target. You've got individual targets. So it doesn't, typically there's not a lot of team environment in that. But also, if you're the top performer, you have a completely different set of rules than the person that's, you know, the bottom performer as well. And so you don't work as a team. Have you seen that change, or have you noticed things like that? Because I obviously was, you know, we're talking 10 years ago that I was still experiencing this.
I think the magic is in where sales teams start to work together more, and they produce results together rather than just having a performance league table. And this is going to fly in the face of a lot of people's conventional wisdom. That is the conventional wisdom. But my belief is that if we work together and we create, and the magic is created in the space between people, and if you build trust and you build, you know, that safety and belonging, as I talked about, particularly building trust, and, you know, you enjoy working with a colleague, you're working for the same aim, and that I to the power of we is far, far more powerful than just individuals playing at their very best. It has a community, I can't say this word, a kind of compound interest effect. You know, just individuals playing as individuals means you can only get so much performance. You put a bunch of individuals together, you give them the right environment that they feel safe and belong in and that they can excel at, and they learn to be resilient together, then actually that exponentially increases performance massively. It's more than you can do with just one person. It's almost like, you know, how's the phrase goes, the whole is more than the sum of the parts. So if you've just got individuals performing at their best, if you can break that model and move it into a team model, then, and everybody's working together, then magic happens, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that the other thing is as well, when I talk to sales leaders, they're like, I want to take care of my top performers. I've got to do that. I'm like, okay, but what happens if your top performer leaves? Oh, my top performer would never leave. Like, they're top performing. It's like, yeah, but they might, if they're a top performer for a few years, they might want another challenge. You know, you're not a top performer because you don't like a challenge. So, you know. And
the interesting thing is that top performers come out of that team in different ways. You know, so you've got Fred who's a top performer in X, and you've got Jenny who's a top performer in, you know, qualifying leads or whatever. So everyone's a top performer in their own way. And if you can harness that, and then you create role models, right, within the team, and everybody's modeling each other. And so we all build together. And I see that Yuri said here that people don't leave their job, they leave their boss. Absolutely. Yeah. And that statistic is very high, actually. It's something like 86% of people leave their boss, not their job, right? So, and, you know, that's quite telling, isn't it? And my belief is that the old way of doing things was very hierarchical. You know, you had you've got this sort of top-down approach, and to get to the very top, you've got to be the manager and or the leader. And I think high-performing teams are different. They self-organize themselves, and they don't necessarily need to be led. Although, if there is a natural leader in that group, then they're still part of the team, and, you know, everybody accepts that leadership. But it is very much an I to the power of we work together, even though we might have a leader that gives us some direction. But a lot of it is self-organized. So it's a kind of balance between direction and being self-organized as a team. And my belief is, and I've worked with lots of high-performing teams, and it's a very addictive experience. And, you know, I found that the teams that I led, although I was the leader of that, I felt very much part of being the team as well as being its natural leader. But very much felt that we were cohering together as a team. And that was the magic that we produced. And it didn't, you know, sometimes we'd be working really long hours, and it wasn't because we had to, it's because we wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, it's a whole new different way of working.
It's definitely a change to what we've seen, especially, you know, if anyone's watched The Wolf of Wall Street, you know, that mentality.
Oh, yeah.
There are still companies out there that have that mentality, which is, you know, work hard, party hard. But if you're not working as hard as the next person, which can also be, that's another thing that's really hard to explain to people. It's like, just because so-and-so is working 16-hour days, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to. It also doesn't necessarily mean that person's very productive, but you also have to figure out how you want to work within that team as well, which is really important. So Stuart's come in with a really good statement, which is sometimes high performers will leave because the business is not capable of fulfilling their needs. 100%. Oh, this is Dean. Sorry, I'm going to go to... you must have come in as I was pressing to Stuart. I'm going to get to Stuart's as well. I was like, hang on a second. That's not the picture I saw. So sometimes High performers will leave because the business is not capable of fulfilling their needs. You always need a plan B and have a succession in mind. Absolutely. But if you have a team of people that are high performing and they're all hitting their targets and they're all working together, you're probably not going to, you're going to have a really good retention rate. You're going to keep your employees. They're going to be happy. They're going to be motivated. They're going to be driven. They'll be honest and open with you. So that's also a really important element when you've built that team up to that point. But as a company, if you can't support that, that high performers' needs, and they have to go on for another challenge, at least it's not going to ruin your whole team. It's it's going to be painful because everyone's works together, but that's definitely a really important part. So with Stuart, leaders for top performers in mind just become accountability partners and sounding boards for strategy. That's a good point too. That's a good point too.
Accountability is really important, and you hold each other to accountability. But equally, you hold each other to, if something fails, then you fail together. I remember one guy, a leader of a team, and a project went badly wrong. So, they were talking about that afterwards and washing up. And, he kind of said, look, no one's to blame for this. We are a team together. We rise together and we fall together. We rise with the tide and we fall with the low tide. So we're not blaming each other, but actually we've got to do better as a team. We don't want this failure again. We need to learn from it, but we fail together. And I love that he recognized that it wasn't one person or a couple of individuals that let the team down. It was we let each other down. We weren't performing at the point that we should have been, because if we were high performing, we wouldn't have let this happen.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. I'm doing a leadership program right now where I talk about the impact that stress has on performance, as I was saying before. And I was talking a lot about the internal pressure and the external pressure. So when you're internally motivated and have internal pressure, you're more likely to be self-motivated, self-driven. So you're able to move forward and you're going to be able to compete against yourself. So it's like, I want to be better than I was yesterday, but you can do that within a team and you can have that internal motivation. Now, where the accountability piece can go a little bit awry, especially in teams, is when there's a lot of external pressure and there's lack of accountability. And it's easy for someone, if something didn't work out, it's easy for the manager or someone else to go, oh, so-and-so's problem. It wasn't my fault. It was this person's. The manager didn't do their job properly or whatever it is. You can point fingers. But if you create an environment where the pressure is internally driven and internally motivated, you're going to have a more successful team, in my opinion, which is really important. So Yuri again, who says, I work with a group of friends more than a decade. We work with each other, not for each other. It works for us.
That's right. Yeah,
# real team. Love it.
Yeah, and the interesting is that real teams, I love that. Thank you, Yuri. Real teams, they don't necessarily need rules necessarily. They work by principles. That's different from rules, because rules are things you shouldn't do, right? Principles are things, for me, principles are things that we do, and they're behaviors that we do aspire to, and we will hold each other accountable to these positive behaviors. A growth mindset, for example. Whereas rules create fear, often, because the rule is you can't do this, you don't do that, and you have to work from 9 to 5, whatever. You're expected to do overtime. Actually, in a high-performing team, the rules are self-organized, but they don't become rules; they become principles, and it's a different kind of culture that it builds. And if something isn't working, then the team work through it. And maybe, a new behavior arrives, or, a new challenge, a new way of looking at it. And in fact, what we're doing here is that conventional wisdom, which isn't a high performing team, to my opinion, is X plus Y plus Z equals something. Here in high performing teams, it's a different mindset. You teach each other to ride a bike. And then once you've learned the basics, you then help each other to do wheel spins and do all sorts of tricks, because you've now got the confidence to do that, and you help each other to do that. And so it's kind of unconventional wisdom we're talking about here. It's really hard to define, but when you get a group of people and they self-organize, they find their own unconventional wisdom. It's like the Avengers without spandex. I love that. Yeah, nice one, Yuri. Yeah, lovely. What we're doing here is, and I don't say this lightly, and I really do mean this, because people say, well, it's a bit trite, but we're accessing our potential superpowers. Because when we get together as a group of individuals with individual strengths, we each have superpowers, right? And it is like the Avengers in that sense. Everyone's got a different superpower, but you put them together and it creates something more than the sum of the parts. It's not a switch and it's not a formula. You have to unlock levels of high performance, if you like, and you kind of self-learn those unlockings, as it were.
And I agree with that. And I think that there's not going to be one rule to fit all. You're going to have to work it out as a team. You're going to have to, as a team, you come up with your own principles. You come up with your own values. You come up with your own accountability and how you want to work. You guys work it out together and you guys do it. And if something's not working, that's okay. You just address it going, this isn't working. So let's change it. How can we make it work? And there has to be that constant conversation, right? So if someone's saying, you know what, I'm feeling like, if a high performing someone in the team is like, you know what, I'm feeling really run down. I feel like I'm overdoing stuff. That's everyone else to turn around and go, okay, cool. Like, how did that happen? How can we support? What can we do? How can we help?
Absolutely.
Rather than that's your problem. You deal with that. That's your journey. Like, I'm not going to go in your journey, right? Which I think is, I will say, I think when a lot of managers, if they're getting somebody coming up to them saying, hey, I'm really not coping with the workload, I'm actually under a lot of pressure, I think it's quick for managers to turn around and say, oh, have an extra day off or have a week off or something like that. But they're not addressing the actual real issue, which is, how did you get here? What's going on? How can we support you? Is it work? Is it something at home? Like there's not enough conversation. I think people are, taking this mental health movement very well, but they're also, here have a day off, here have a day off, when it might not actually necessarily be about the day off. It might necessarily be about the team culture, about what have you built, how is everyone else going, what's happening at home, and developing a culture of trust and honesty is really important.
Do you know what? I find that when people are allowed to self-organize themselves and develop their own principles, then fear's out the window, firstly, okay. Secondly, that they build an agile process that just somehow allows that group of people as individuals and as a group to bring their very best game, okay? And something happens at this point that it's not a switch, but it's some part of our brain that just locks into place, and it's like an addictive experience that we're like, wow, this is because I'm bringing my very best. And it's not just at work, because actually we take this at home with us. We take it into our play. We take it into our families. Because if our work is all right and we're building the resilience in our workplace, somehow that translates also to happy at work, happy at home, right? And there is something about this, trust destroys trust. Absolute trust destroys stress, says Dean. I completely agree with that. When you're stressed and you don't feel supported, then distrust starts to move in, and we start to find ways of fixing that. But what I find is that in high performing teams, there is the care and the understanding and the empathy and all of those things. But it's almost that we each bring our best game, and there's no pressure to do that because we want to do it. And weirdly, that kind of knocks the stress bits out, and the bad days are less of them. It's like weird because it translates into our home environment too. And even if things are going, maybe something happens at home, weirdly, but the attitude at work carries us through our home life as well. I can't really quite explain it. There's something magical that happens. Yeah.
Well, it's osmosis, right? Like if you're feeling good at work and you come home and you step into a situation at home that maybe is not positive, but you are able to take in the same attitudes. You might still be having a rough time at home. That doesn't change that, but you can take those attitudes. You come at it differently,
right?
You come at it differently. You won't be coming at it from the emotional part in your brain. You'll be coming at it from the top down, as you would be saying.
Absolutely, the best part of your brain up here. Yeah.
Yes, rather than working from the emotional standpoint. So yeah, I love it. I've it's been fantastic. So I could talk to you for another hour, but I actually have a meeting, so I feel really bad that I have to cut this off. So I actually am going to have to say, we're going to have to pick this up again because we have the most epic chats. Every time we chat, we should just film them because we always have really, really awesome chats, you and I. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your ideas about high performance teams, talking about your exercise, talk about your diet, everything that obviously we both like to talk about. So I really, really appreciate it. So for anyone that wants to get in touch with you or wants to check out a little bit more about what you're doing, how can they find you?
Right, they can find me on LinkedIn through my LinkedIn profile. I'm sure there'll be a link there on the description. On my website, which is pdx-consulting.com, is another place to get me, and you'll see me there. But please, yeah, if you want to have a further conversation about any of these things, I'm very happy to do so. So thank you very much, Katie.
No, thank you. And one final question, which is if you could give anyone one piece of advice to help them get their shit together, literally or figuratively, what advice would that be?
Okay, so here's some characteristics that I think work really well for human beings in teams, right? One is be humble, be vulnerable, and be okay with that. Secondly, which is hard for some people to do, let go of your ego. Learn to collaborate and cohere together. And boost your emotional intelligence, learn some soft skills, and set massive goals. And read, folks. Pick up books that help you to get to the next level. And I think that's why my single piece of really good advice is pick up some really good books, like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or Dale Carnegie's book on Win Friends and Influence. These are old books, but the wisdom is innate in those. And find role models, folks. Build on role models, model other people that do this stuff well. And you've got to change from the inside out. You can't do it from the outside in. You've got to change you to be able to function well with other people to then make magic happen. And that's how you access your superpowers.
I love it. I asked for 1 tip, you give us 3, so I appreciate it so much. Problem. And you gave us some books as well. I'll actually find those books and pop them in the comment section below, guys. So if you're interested in those books, I'll find them and pop them in as well. So thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on. I'm sure you'll be another guest because we could chat for another 2 hours. Let's be real. So thanks for everyone for joining in. Thanks so much for Yuri, Dean, Stuart, Claire, everyone that was in. I know Thomas said hi, so hi Thomas if you're still here. And I will be back probably in a couple of weeks with another Get Your Shit Together show. So as always, guys, get your shit together, literally and figuratively.
Get a shovel.
Bye.